So yes, once again, just would like to explain once again whatever we have discussed. I opened the Linux terminal. Let me also open the file. Let's start slow. Please practice it and then we will catch up some pace. Okay, no problem. We can start slow and then we can catch up some pace very soon. So the first thing is Linux. Once again, I am just explaining you once again. The first thing is path.
Sir, are you sharing the screen?
Yeah, I'm going to share the screen. The first thing is path. Wherever you log into the system, whenever you log into the system, that would become your root path. That is directly you get into the path. For example, here I open a terminal in my Linux machine. Okay, directly I would be into my home directory. Directly the terminal opens into my home directory. This is called the terminal. Very much basics we are discussing about. PWD means present working directory, which is a command. PWD is nothing but a present working directory command. Sorry, PWD, present working directory. So I am the user called Jitain. It clearly tells that the username is Jitain because always home directory and then Jitain talks about I am the user called Jitain. This is called the root directory. Now you are in the root directory. From here ls means list of list. From here you see that the whole directory structure starts from here. Directory structure is very important in Linux or Unix based systems. This is a general directory structure for Unix or Linux based system. There may be little changes between Unix and Linux, but most probably this is the directory structure. This is the basic directory structure. We are in the root directory. That means we are in the root directory. How do you know? The PWD, it tells that you are in the root directory. And the second thing is, how do you go to that directory, the path? Unlike Windows, Linux, Unix based systems do not have C drive, D drive and etc. Unix based systems has a hierarchy, directory hierarchy. Everything starts from the root directory. From root directory it goes to, you have to go to different directories. The root directory is the root. From there are different directories. So there are two kinds of paths. If you want to traverse two different path, okay, you want to go to different path. Why do you have to go to different path? Because of different purposes. If you want to go to different file path in Unix based systems, there is an absolute path and then there is a relative path. For example, cd, this operator, it takes me to the my user home directory. cd, this one, it takes me to the user home directory. Now pwd, I am in the home directory. The absolute path means from the root directory to whichever the path you want to go, which we call it as a absolute path. So this is a forward slash. Unlike Windows systems, this is a backward slash is used in Windows systems, but in Linux based systems the forward slash is used. Right, the forward slash is used everywhere. Right. If I want to go to home directory, I can use cd dot dot, it takes me one directory back. But the same command, if I run again here, it would not take me to the home directory, it would take me to the root directory. This is called the relative path, relative to where you are. Relative to where is what is your present working directory. Relative to what is your present working directory is what the relative path talks about. What is your present working directory? Relative to that, wherever you want to go to the path, that talks about the home path. Let us say that I am in the root directory. I am in the home directory. I want to go to the home directory. I am in the home G10. I want to go to home directory. Two ways. Number one, I can use absolute path. This talks about the home, and then this is the directory name. This is called the absolute path. Or I can go to the relative path like this. For example, I want to go to home Jitin. There are two ways now. Already I am in home, so I can directly go to Jitin as a relative path because already I am in home. I can go to this directory. Or I can use the absolute path. This is called the absolute path. So most of the DevOps related scripts then you write, it is advised to use absolute path in many cases. There are some cases where you use relative path as well. Okay, maybe sometimes you may not know what the absolute path is when you are writing scripts, then you may use relative path, but you should know what is absolute path and then what is relative path. It's very important. Okay, can anyone tell me what is the difference between absolute path and relative path? You have to speak. Bhavya, Vaishnavi, please speak up. It's very important because once you start speaking up, then you will ask more questions as well. It's very important, so please do talk.
Yeah, sir. Like relative path means like wherever you are,
Yeah,
just let to know.
relative path means relative to your
Takes to
current
your
path.
where.
Current path where you are,
Yeah.
relative to your current path, which is called the relative path. Okay, absolute path means forget about where you are, but you exactly go to that, you exactly follow the path. This is called the path. You exactly follow the path is called the absolute path. Absolutely, what is the exact path? You follow the path which is called a absolute path. Relative path means where you are currently. Right now I am in a directory called pwd home Jitin. From here where you have to go is what the relative path. For example, I want to go to a directory called bin. How can I go using relative path? Cd dot dot, it takes me to home, again dot dot, it takes me to root, and then here I go to bin. This is the relative path. This is the relative path. Okay, how can I go to bin without this relative path? Directly I can go to bin because I know that bin is the root directory. cd/bin, it directly takes me to the bin, which is called the absolute path. It is always good to know where to use and when to use relative paths, when to use absolute paths. Personally, I use most of the cases absolute paths. Sometimes I may not know where my the program or whatever I am running, from where it is running, but I know wherever my program is running, from there I know how to go to a directory or something. Okay, in forward or backward direction, whatever, I can use a relative path. I don't mind that wherever my program is running, but I know how to go to a path which is called the relative path. But I don't want to do that absolutely. I know that the application path, from there I would like to use, then I use the absolute path. So sometimes we may use absolute path, sometimes you may use relative path. Relative means relative to what? Okay, relative to what? Relative to your current directory where you are in, which is called relative path and then absolute path. So coming back once again to this particular systems, as I said earlier, I am just explaining once again so that you would be very clear, because these are the very much basics, and then you should know these basics. Unless you don't know these basics, it's very hard to understand Linux systems. Okay, the first one is called root directory. That means the slash forward slash talks about the root directory. That is where the hierarchy of the directory starts. That is where the entire structure starts. There is a directory called bin directory. Bin directory talks about all the binaries inside your system. ls means list of the files. This is called the bin directory, all the binaries that are used in the system. User, you run ls command, you run man command, you run cat command. We will discuss about some of the commands. All these commands are nothing but applications, programs. These are stored in the bin directory. You see that so many programs are there. And there is something called a boot directory. Boot, there is a directory called boot. Boot directory. Boot directory talks about your booting related information inside your system. How does your system boots? That means booting is a procedure, it's a process that involves a lot of stages to boot up your system. Once you switch on your system, it goes to BIOS setup, where all the hardware components are initialized. You see that a lot of lights are blinking, and then some beep sounds come, and all this ensure that all the hardware configuration, all the hardware all the hardware peripherals in your system are initialized. And then there is a program called bootloader that goes and then loads your first boot device. It could be your hard disk or USB device where you set up in your BIOS, and then it goes and start reading the program that is written in the boot device. Okay, which we call it as boot record. Okay, after that the kernel initializes. It goes and loads the actual your operating system. Your operating system then initializes all the processes, and then it mounts all the files, which we call it as file mounting, sorry. And the user space initialization and etc things happens. The whole thing is called boot process. The whole thing we call it as a boot process. However, boot process is uh, right. Then there is a dev directory, all the devices. Dev means not the developer directory, it's called all the devices. That means terminals, your printers, or your output devices, input device, everything, all the devices related information is in the dev directory. All the configurations about your system is in the etc directory. All configurations, it's a data store of your configurations for your applications, for your systems, whatever it is. There is a home directory where all the user related information is there. List of the users are showed in the home directory. There is a library directory, lib directory, lib32, lib64, lib directory. Okay, that means the libraries that are required for the systems or applications stored in lib directory. There is a lib64, which are 62-bit, 64-bit, and then lib32, they are lib32-bit. There is a media and MNT directory, mount directory. So mounting removable media devices, something like USBs, optical discs. If you insert a CD, or if you insert a floppy, or if you insert a USB, everything is mounted to MNT directory. Opt directories for optional software packages are stored in opt directory. Proc directory is very important directory. It contains the information about the running processes, how much memory they are consuming, everything about your system resources, everything is stored in proc directory. There is a root directory that contains the root user information. Spin directory is similar to bin directory, but these are all system binaries. temp directory is used to store temporary files in this directory. There is a USR directory, we call it as a user directory, all the user related applications, because there are subdirectories in that USR, and is called user bin, user sbin, user lib, user local, etc. All the shared files, shared executables, binaries, everything is stored in USR directory. And there is a directory called var directory, which is the variable data files. That means the files is varying over the period of time, something like log files or spool files, some files that are related to the printers, related to the mails, because the data would not stay long, it will go away. Or the log files, they keeps on coming into the log directories, log files of a system, everything is stored in the var directory. So you should know the basic information about these directories, because you are not supposed to go and write your applications in all these directories. If you are developing an application, you should write your application in which directory? Your home directory. This is the directory where you have to use. Shouldn't I use here? Yes, you can also use here, but it is not the apt. Okay, we don't take food in the bedroom, right? We eat food in the dining room, we eat food on the table, right? Because there is a special purpose for each and every room in our house. Similarly, there is a directory for different purposes in Linux. So I will go and write my program in etc directory. It will accept provided by some permissions, but it is not cooking your food in the bedroom. Is nothing but it, you go and write your applications in the etc directory. So all your user related information, your files, everything should be there in the home directory, all your programs and everything. Sometimes binaries you may move to bin directory or your user bin directory, user local bin directory. That depends on the kind of application that you are running. It is at a system level or user level, that depends on, but generally these are the directory structures and these are the directories used in the Unix based systems. Okay, so go through that, try to understand more about these directories, more about these directory systems. Tomorrow what we do, the next class, the following class, what we will do is, I will be explaining about file systems, providing privileges and everything to the file systems, how to give access to the file system, what are read, write and then execute access to the file system, and we will dig deeper into the file system accessibility perspective. How do you give access to a file, what kind of access, what is read access, write access, and permissions, basically about the files, how to create files and how to give permissions to the files, how to create groups, how do you relate a group to the users, how to see the list of users and list of groups, uh, and all. We also discussed a user called pseudo user. What is pseudo user?
Super dupe.
Yeah, super user do, sudo super user do. That means it's a command, actually it is not a user, it is a command. Sudo is a command. Many people think that sudo user, but sudo command, sudo is a command. That command is used to execute other commands with the elevated privileges. Elevated privileges means the privileges are advanced privileges, permissions are given. For example, in Windows you right click and run as administrator, right? Similar, if you want to do it in Linux based systems, then we call it as pseudo user. Because should I use pseudo user, can't I do with root user, right?
Yes.
You can also do with root user, but why don't we use as a root user? Means you have a manager in your organization. Okay, a manager has got access to go everywhere inside your organization. You want to go to a server room, do you go and ask your manager to open a server room for you? Because manager has access to everywhere in your company, every desk or every room in your company, you cannot go and ask your manager, because you ask your manager to do certain things which are really crucial, and then only manager has to do. If you want to access to a room, even though the manager has got access to the room, but you don't ask your manager to a server room, you ask somebody else who is there to provide access to enter into the server room or to enter into the meeting room or etc. That is nothing but sudo command. So generally the question is, why should I use sudo? I can directly log in as a root user. Yes, but it is not advised. Root user is very sharp. Root user has got permissions to do anything in your system, so unknowingly you go and delete some files, they are lost. As I said earlier, uh, there is no trash directory or there is no bin directory, there is no recycle bin, sorry, there is not bin, there is no recycle bin in your Linux based terminal. From terminal, if you delete something, it gets deleted. So you have to take care of your system with utmost care. You have to deal with the system with utmost care, because once the files are lost, they are lost. Okay, so that's what for today's session. If you have any questions, please do ask me, otherwise we will connect tomorrow. So from tomorrow onwards, we will have you will have steep learning. We will be learning more commands, and then we will deal with many things. So please be ready. I'm just giving some time for you to install Linux, to execute Linux and all. If you still find some issues, please let me know. Once I am available, I will get back to you. Okay, thank you very much. Have a great day for folks from the other side of the globe, and then great evening, good night for people from India. Bye.
Bye.
Okay, sir.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Good
Thank
night.
you.